Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. For a change, I have some good news, well, at least in my opinion, from Germany, and that is that in recent polls, the AfD is doing very well federally in Germany, not just in the central German or the new federal states, but they're doing relatively well everywhere in Germany now. I have not been talking about the AfD anymore that much recently, but I think now this has to change. I have some catching up to do. I still informed you about the most recent developments, like how they positioned themselves during the China bug time and the lockdowns and such things, and then also that they finally got rid of the center cuck submarine, Mr. Meuthen. That was very important, and maybe more about that later or in a future video. But now I want to talk about very recent developments. In a new poll, a very recent poll, the AfD even became second strongest party in Germany, reaching 20%, which is an all-time high for them. And maybe most important, well, they came ahead of the Social Democrat Party of our current Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. And for weeks already, as you might imagine, our media is in panic mode and they're all trying to solve the question, why is the AfD so strong and whose fault is it? And of course, political parties and the usual pundits have also joined in this quest to explain why the AfD is all of a sudden doing so well, and if we're all surrounded by evil right-wingers. I mean, it's 1 out of 5 after all right now. So in today's video, I want to keep it relatively short and I want to give you the data from the polls federally, but also from the different states, our federal states here in Germany, so that you get the current picture of how the AfD is doing at the moment. And towards the end of the video, I want to show you also the timeline, so how these polling scores developed over time and what that is attributed to and what stages we can identify during recent years. But before we get into all of that fun, a big thank you goes out to my supporters and my subscribers. If you find these videos entertaining and or useful, subscribe to my channel and be sure to also ring the bell icon on YouTube at least so that you get notified. I had many people tell me recently that they don't get notified anymore. Maybe it has something to do with that. But you can also get notifications via Telegram, of course, if you subscribe to my channel there. The links are in the video description down below. So let's get right into this first poll that sent our political establishment in Germany into full panic mode after they were not doing that well for the last couple of weeks either, because this jump in popularity is not so sudden. It is a spike nonetheless, but for the last weeks the AfD was already doing not that bad. Alright, so here you see in place 1 still the CDU-CSU. This is how it has always been pretty much under Angela Merkel, but also now under Friedrich Merz, still the same thing. They are the center-right party, still the biggest party in Germany, or the one with the most votes and also doing very well in the polls still. Then in second place now the AfD with 20% and with 19% the Social Democrat Party of current Chancellor Olaf Scholz. After that, the Green Party that dropped down to 13% after they had even 25% before and after the last election, just not at the election. There they only had 15%, which is a good thing for Germany, I think. I really don't like the Green Party, as you might know probably. Then the Commie Party and our pseudo-liberal party, FDP, they are around 5%. In some polls they are in the parliament, in some they're not. Remember, we have a 5% hurdle and parties need to have over 5% to be represented as a faction in our Bundestag. Alright, so is that just a fluke? Is this an outlier? What is going on? Well, not really, because if you look at the average result of all recent polls on the federal level, so the question is always, if next Sunday it was the federal election, the parliamentary election for the Bundestag, who would you vote for? That is the basic question. And if you look at these average numbers, well, the SPD is still at 19% and the AfD at 18.5%. So while on average the SPD still scores a little higher than the AfD, the increase in voter preference for the AfD is not just an outlier in this one poll, but it is very easy to see that in all the polls and also in the average, of course. For the possible coalitions, that would mean that the current so-called traffic light or Ampel coalition, Social Democrats, Green Party and Pseudo-Liberal Party, they would be unable to rule. They don't have a majority in parliament anymore at the moment. So the two realistic coalitions that you can identify then is the CDU-CSU together with the Social Democrats. This is how Angela Merkel liked to rule. And also CDU-CSU, Green Party and FDP, the so-called Jamaica coalition, because it's black, green and yellow. That is also possible because all these parties are one uniparty, basically. They are one state establishment party and they, of course, have coalitions with whoever is there for it. That is the effective one-party system that we have in Germany, basically. Of course, the CDU-CSU could rule together with the AfD in a black-blue coalition. They would have over 53% in parliament. That is a, well, not too large, but still comfortable majority. But of course, that is completely out of the question, and I will tell you later why that also is and why it's a good thing. So if you compare these polling averages on the federal level with the last real election of our parliament, the Bundestag, you see that the CDU-CSU, so the center-right party, they have won quite substantially, around 4%. The SPD has lost a lot. The AfD has gained a lot. The Green Party stayed almost the same, but remember, briefly before the election and also after the election until, well, earlier this year or last winter, they had 25% still. The FDP lost a lot, no surprise. They are always doing very bad in the polls, and then when it's election time, they come out with some new agenda and with some new promises. And because these potential liberal voters, they really have a memory time span of maybe just 1 year, that's why they vote for them again every time. And the commie parties, since they are getting rid of the more nationally minded socialist in there, Sarah Wagenknecht, well, they're doing very, very badly, under 5%, so according to the rules, they should be out of the parliament in any case. Alright, so how does it look like in the different states? You might remember the AfD is doing particularly well in the east of the Federal Republic, so in central Germany. So that means that despite these overall gains in Germany, they're not doing that well in the west. And yes, if we look at Bavaria, for example, that has the CSU party and also the Freie Wähler, which are both parties that are more conservative than the CDU that you find in the rest of Germany, well, that puts these 12% of the AfD into perspective because the center-right parties are more to the right in Bavaria, and that is, of course, competition. So you have to understand this. Bavaria is rather conservative compared to the rest of Germany, but there are 3 conservative parties here. At least this is how people see them. I would disagree, and many of you might also disagree, that they're not really conservative or that conservative is not even a good thing, but that is how most people see it. Remember that when I use these terms. Then moving to central Germany, Brandenburg, AfD is strongest party at 23%. Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, AfD is second strongest party at 25%. North Rhine-Westphalia to the west, only 9%, a very diverse state in Germany. The Free State of Saxony, AfD, strongest party at 32%. Sachsen-Anhalt, AfD, second strongest party at 26%. Thüringen, a very interesting state where the AfD is the strongest party at 30%. I covered this state in the last election and what happened when they had to vote for their MP in parliament. I covered that in depth. Check out my old videos. This is a very interesting thing that happened there, and it reveals very well and very nicely how we are living in a, well, I would say somewhat of a simulation of democracy rather. To make it short, they repeated under intense pressure, they repeated the election until the right result was reached. And that is that the commie, that was the old governor, is also the new governor. He initially promised that soon there would be new elections for the parliament, but then he just, dropped that, and now, well, he is still in power for a full term. Absolutely ridiculous and borderline illegal, if you ask me. All right, so how did that really change over time? How did the AfD become that strong? Well, here you can see how almost steadily their score in the polls, their popularity was increasing since the middle of last year. As you might remember, they were not doing that well when there were the China bug measures in place in Germany because, well, Germans want security and consistency during these times, and they don't see, or they didn't see at that time at least, the AfD as such a solution. Despite of all the illegal and horrible things that happened during that time, the govern me harder Germans thought that Angela Merkel is really the best politician, and the CDU was very popular during that time. That mentality is maybe the one that you find in a city under siege. Now, if we look at the last 8 years, you can clearly see that, yes, the AfD had over 15% for a while in 2018, and they were getting more popular after Angela Merkel illegally opened the borders in 2015. But then, as I said, during the coup, they were ranging at around 10%, and it became really boring because they didn't move. No matter what kind of scandalous thing happened, they were always doing a little better in the east, really bad in the west, and federally around 10%, as I said. But this really changed when our new government in Berlin, the new coalition, this Ampel coalition, as I said, Social Democrats, Liberal Party and the Green Party, when they took over, and this surge of the AfD in the polls that really coincides with the plans of the Green Party and of the ruling coalition to, well, basically take away people's houses by means of carbon taxes and forced modernizations, like they force people then, or they want to force them to get rid of their old heating systems and put in these electric heat pumps. Also, they want to force them to insulate their buildings better. And that leads to a, massive cost for homeowners and also increases and rises in rent payments. I want to flesh this out a little more in a future video. Today, I just wanted to give you these numbers. I wanted to discuss the polling data, and in an upcoming video I really want to discuss a little more about that. I think I will give you a black pill and a white pill about German voters and the AfD. But for today I want to leave it at that. I wonder how sustainable this increase or this surge in the polls will be, if they will drop down to 10% in the future or if they stay up there. And people always wondered, in many European countries, populist parties, traditionalist or more right-wing parties were really getting more popular, whereas in Germany the AfD was always staying at around 10%. How can this be when the problems are so bad in Germany? Well, now that changed, and the AfD, such as other comparable parties in other European countries, are also getting more popular. And if they can keep this 20% position or even get above that, well, then it will become very interesting in Germany, because the question is how you then rule such a country. What kind of coalition can you still have? The prospect is that maybe in Germany on the federal level, but definitely in some Central European federal states, it will be very, very difficult to form a stable ruling coalition as long as they ignore the AfD, as long as all the other parties say that we want nothing to do with them, we won't even talk to them. Maybe every state in Germany will become like Thüringen, like Thuringia. More about that, as I said, in an upcoming video. Let me know what you think about that and enjoy the rest of your day. Servus, Kameraden.